My name does not matter anymore. What matters is that I am old now, and old soldiers are allowed to talk, even when the things we say make young people uncomfortable. Tonight, you asked me for a war story. You wanted something with glory in it. I am sorry to disappoint you, but I do not have one of those. What I have is the truth. And the truth about fighting humans is not glorious. It is something closer to a lesson that never stops teaching you, even decades later, even in dreams. I was young once, if you can believe that. I joined the fleet the way most of us did back then, because it was expected, because my family had a long line of service behind it, and because I believed, like everyone believed, that we understood war. We had fought a dozen species before humans. We had rules for war, written over centuries. We knew how to calculate an enemy, their weapons, their numbers, their will to keep fighting after they started losing. War, to us, was a kind of arithmetic. You added up strength and subtracted losses, and eventually you got a number that told you who would win. Humans broke that arithmetic, not because they were stronger, not because their ships were better, or their weapons more advanced. In the beginning, by every measure we trusted, they were behind us. That is what made everything that followed so strange to explain, and so hard to forget. I remember the first time I saw a human up close. It was not on some grand battlefield, not in the middle of a fleet engagement with 100 ships lighting up the dark. It was small, a boarding action, on a supply station we had captured earlier that week. We thought it was secure. We thought wrong. I was assigned to a routine patrol through the lower decks, walking corridors that had gone quiet after the fighting stopped. That quiet should have told me something. In every war I had known before, silence after a fight meant one side had given up, and the other side was resting. With humans, I would learn, silence sometimes just meant they were still working. I found one of them in a maintenance corridor, alone, doing something to a control panel with tools that did not belong to our ships. I raised my weapon. I expected fear. I expected the kind of reaction I had seen from other species when caught out. Pleading, panic, some attempt to bargain. The human looked at me, set down the tool slowly, and said nothing at all. No begging, no panic. Just a long, steady look, like they were measuring me the same way I was measuring them. Then they said, in careful words I barely understood at the time, that I should call my superiors, because the station's life support was about to fail, and I had about 6 minutes to get my people out. I did not believe them. I should have. That was the first thing I learned about humans. They did not fight the way we expected fear to make a person fight. When they were cornered, they did not become desperate. They became calm, and in my experience, calm is a far more dangerous thing to face than rage. We got out with almost no time to spare. The human was gone by the time reinforcements arrived, slipped away through a service duct too small for most of my crew to follow. I remember standing in that corridor afterward, shaking, not from fear of dying, but from the confusion of not understanding what had just happened. Why warn me? Why not let me die there? An enemy soldier. Alone. Easy. It took me years of fighting them to understand that this was not mercy in the way we thought of mercy. As weakness, as softness, as something a soldier gives up when he stops caring about winning. For humans, it seemed to come from somewhere else entirely. It was not about me. It was about who they wanted to remain, even in the middle of a war they did not start and did not want. I wish I could tell you that was the strangest thing I saw. It was only the beginning. The moment that truly broke something in me came 2 years later, during what our historians eventually called the Long Siege, though it was never officially named that at the time. We had a human outpost surrounded, completely surrounded, cut off from supply lines, cut off from reinforcements, cut off from any reasonable hope of rescue. Our commanders were confident. Every calculation said the outpost would fall within a rotation, maybe 2. We had done this before, to other species, and the pattern always held: cut off the head, starve the body, and eventually the will to resist collapses. The humans held for 41 days. I was part of the force stationed outside, watching the readings, waiting for the surrender that never came. We intercepted their communications sometimes, garbled and encrypted, but enough came through that we understood something about what was happening inside those walls. They were rationing food down to almost nothing. Their medical supplies were gone within the first 2 weeks. They had no reinforcements coming, and they knew it. And still, Every attempt we made to advance was met with resistance so organized, so relentlessly creative, that our own engineers began studying their tactics, instead of mocking them. I remember one of our senior officers, a veteran of 3 prior wars, saying something I never forgot. He said that fighting other species felt like fighting an army. Fighting humans felt like fighting a family that had decided, together, that none of them were leaving that outpost without the others. On the 41st day, the outpost did not fall. We were ordered to withdraw, not because we lost the battle in any technical sense. We still held every advantage on paper, but because command finally admitted what the soldiers on the ground already knew. Taking that outpost would cost more than any strategic value it held. Humans had made themselves too expensive to defeat, not through strength, but through sheer, unbending refusal to stop. That was when I stopped believing war with humans could be won, the way our textbooks described. There is something else I need to tell you, something that took me even longer to understand, and it is the part of this story that still visits me at night, more than any battle ever did. Humans did not hate us. I know that sounds strange to say about people we were fighting, people who resisted us at every turn, who cost us more losses than any other conflict in our history. But I spent years around human prisoners, human negotiators, even human soldiers I faced directly more than once across different campaigns, and I never once saw the kind of hatred I expected. I saw sadness, I saw exhaustion, I saw a grim, tired kind of duty, like people doing something they wished they did not have to do, but would not stop doing, simply because stopping felt wrong to them. I asked a human prisoner once, during a rare quiet moment in a holding facility, why they kept fighting when the numbers so clearly favored us. I expected defiance, or maybe some rehearsed speech about freedom. Instead, they looked at me for a long moment and said something simple. They said that giving up was not the same as being safe, and that some things were worth protecting, even if protecting them cost everything. I did not understand it then. I am not sure I fully understand it now, but I have never forgotten it. There was one encounter, near the very end of my service, that I think about more than any other. We had a human pilot in our custody, wounded, alone, the last survivor of a small skirmish that had gone badly for both sides. By every rule I had been trained under, that pilot was mine to do with as I saw fit. Command would not have questioned harsh treatment. Some of my crew expected it. Instead, I found myself giving that pilot water, and later, when a medic could be spared, basic treatment for the wounds. My crew asked me why. I did not have a good answer at the time. I only knew that something about that first human in the maintenance corridor, all those years earlier, had stayed with me, and I did not want to become the kind of soldier who could not explain his own mercy. Later, when that pilot was returned during a prisoner exchange, they looked back at me before boarding the transport. They did not say thank you. They did not need to. They simply nodded, once, the same steady look I remembered from that very first encounter years before. It was the look of someone who understood exactly what I had chosen to do, and exactly what it had cost me among my own people to do it. The war with humans did not end the way our other wars ended, with a clear surrender, a clear victor, a treaty signed by the losing side on the winning side's terms. It ended in something closer to exhaustion on both parts, an uneasy agreement that neither side had the stomach to keep paying the price the fighting demanded. I have heard some call it a stalemate. I have heard others call it humanity's quiet victory, since we were the ones who stopped believing we could win, while they never stopped believing they could survive. I do not know if that counts as winning, by our old definitions. I only know that after the fighting stopped, none of us who served in that war ever spoke about humans the way we spoke about other enemies. There was no mockery in it. There was no easy contempt. When old soldiers gathered, and someone brought up the human campaigns, the room always went a little quieter, a little more careful, like we were talking about something that deserved more respect than we knew how to give it at the time. So here is what I want you to understand. All these years later, sitting here listening to an old veteran talk more than he probably should. It is not that humans were unbeatable. Everything can be beaten, given enough will and enough loss. It is that humans made losing to them feel like the wiser choice, and made winning against them feel like something you would regret for the rest of your life. If you ever find yourself standing across from a human, in negotiation or in conflict, remember what I am telling you tonight. Do not mistake their calm for weakness. Do not mistake their mercy for softness. And whatever you do, never assume that because their weapons are simpler, their will is simpler too. I fought humans for the better part of a decade, and I am still not entirely sure I understood them by the end of it. All I know for certain is this: I would rather stand beside them than ever face them again. That is the story you asked for. I am sorry it did not have the glory you wanted, but I promised you the truth, and this is the only truth I have.